Did you know that at its zenith, the Roman Empire controlled nearly the entire Mediterranean world, a sprawling dominion of unparalleled power and influence? Its legions were legendary, its laws foundational, and its culture permeated the lives of millions. Yet, this seemingly invincible behemoth eventually crumbled, a process often attributed to the so-called barbarians. But was it truly just these external forces that brought down the greatest empire in history? The narrative of Rome's fall is far more intricate than simple invasions. While barbarian migrations and military pressures certainly played a crucial role, the empire was also suffering from deep internal wounds. Imagine a magnificent oak tree, seemingly strong, but with its roots slowly rotting from within. External storms might hasten its fall, but the internal decay has already sealed its fate. So, join us on this journey through time as we explore the multifaceted reasons behind the decline and fall of the Western Roman Empire. We'll delve into the economic woes that crippled its foundations, the political infighting that weakened its leadership, and the societal shifts that eroded its strength. And yes, we will, of course, examine the relentless pressure exerted by various barbarian groups on its vast and increasingly porous borders. Stay with us until the very end, because the number one reason often cited, the one you think you know best, might just surprise you with some of the latest historical interpretations and ongoing archaeological discoveries that continue to shed new light on this pivotal period in human history. Let's unravel this epic saga together, exploring the complexities and nuances that led to the demise of an empire that once defined the very concept of civilization in the West. Prepare to have your understanding of Roman history challenged and enriched. One of the most significant cracks in the Roman foundation was its ailing economy. For centuries, Rome had prospered through conquest, bringing in vast wealth and resources from newly acquired territories and a steady supply of slaves. However, as the empire ceased its major expansions, this flow of new wealth began to dry up. The costs of maintaining a massive army and an extensive bureaucracy remained high, leading to increasing financial strain. Successive emperors resorted to devaluing the currency, reducing the amount of precious metals in Roman coins. This led to rampant inflation, making everyday goods more expensive and eroding public trust in the economy. Trade networks, once the lifeblood of the empire, began to suffer as instability grew and the value of currency fluctuated wildly. The vast gap between the wealthy elite and the impoverished masses also exacerbated these economic woes, creating social unrest and hindering overall productivity. Adding to these economic woes was the empire's over-reliance on slave labor. While slavery had fueled its early growth, it stifled technological innovation and created a large, unproductive segment of the population. As the supply of new slaves diminished with the end of major conquests, the existing system became increasingly unsustainable, contributing to labor shortages in crucial sectors like agriculture. The burden of taxation fell heavily on the free peasant farmers, many of whom were forced to sell their lands to wealthy landowners, leading to the growth of large estates and a decline in the independent farming class, further weakening the economic base. Political instability served as another major catalyst for Rome's decline. The later centuries of the empire were marked by a rapid succession of emperors, many of whom met violent ends at the hands of their own soldiers or political rivals. The lack of a clear and stable system of succession led to frequent civil wars, diverting crucial resources and attention away from pressing external threats. The Praetorian Guard, originally intended to protect the emperor, often became kingmakers, wielding immense power and contributing to the atmosphere of political intrigue and violence. The sheer size of the empire also presented immense administrative challenges. Attempts to address this, such as Diocletian's division of the empire into eastern and western halves, ultimately exacerbated the problem. While intended to improve governance and defense, the two halves increasingly pursued separate interests and grew apart. The wealthier and more stable Eastern Roman Empire, later known as Byzantium, often prioritized its own concerns, leaving the western half to grapple with its mounting problems with less support. The constant power struggles between ambitious generals and weak emperors further eroded central authority and made it difficult to implement effective policies. The Roman military, once the most formidable fighting force in the world, also underwent a gradual decline. The constant need to defend vast borders stretched its resources thin, and the quality of its soldiers began to wane. Increasingly, the empire relied on barbarian mercenaries to fill the ranks of its legions. While these mercenaries could be effective fighters, their loyalty was often questionable, and they sometimes even turned against the empire that employed them, as seen in several key battles. The traditional Roman discipline and military ethos seemed to erode over time, contributing to a less effective fighting force. Now, let's turn our attention to the groups traditionally labeled as barbarians. It's important to remember that this term was used by the Romans to refer to any peoples outside their cultural sphere, and often carried negative connotations. In reality, many of these groups had complex societies, sophisticated military organizations, and their own distinct cultures. They weren't simply hordes of savages, but diverse peoples with their own motivations and ambitions. One of the most significant barbarian groups to interact with Rome was the Goths. Initially, they had a complex relationship with the empire, sometimes serving as allies and even providing soldiers for the Roman army. However, mistreatment, broken treaties, and the pressure of other migrating groups, like the Huns, often led to conflict. The Visigoths, under their leader Alaric, famously sacked Rome in 410 AD, a deeply symbolic event that shook the empire's prestige to its core. Following the Visigoths, other barbarian groups like the Vandals, Suebi, and Alans crossed into Roman territory, particularly the western provinces. The Vandals, after migrating through Gaul and Spain, eventually established a powerful kingdom in North Africa, a region crucial for Rome's grain supply. Their conquest of North Africa in the 5th century was a devastating blow to the Western Empire, further crippling its economy and its ability to feed its population. The Huns, a nomadic group who migrated westward from Central Asia, played a significant indirect role in the fall of Rome. Their arrival in Europe put immense pressure on other barbarian groups, forcing them to move westward and into Roman territory in search of refuge and new lands. The Huns, under their fearsome leader Attila, also launched devastating raids into both the Eastern and Western Roman empires in the mid-5th century, further destabilizing the region. Smaller Germanic tribes, such as the Franks, Angles, and Saxons, also played a crucial role in the fragmentation of the Western Roman Empire. Over time, these groups migrated into Roman provinces like Gaul, modern-day France, and Britannia, modern-day Britain, gradually establishing their own independent kingdoms and displacing Roman authority. This process of settlement and the assertion of local power further weakened the central imperial control in the West. Now, let's look at the convergence of these internal weaknesses and external pressures, the point where the rot within met the storm without. The Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD is often considered a major turning point. The Visigoths, who had been allowed to settle within Roman territory but were mistreated, rebelled and decisively defeated a large Roman army, killing the Eastern Roman Emperor, Valens. This battle shattered the myth of Roman military invincibility and demonstrated that barbarian armies could indeed overcome Roman legions. The subsequent centuries saw a continued pattern of barbarian incursions, Roman military setbacks, and the gradual erosion of imperial control. The Western Roman emperors became increasingly reliant on barbarian generals for military strength, a dependence that ultimately undermined their own authority. These powerful barbarian leaders often held the real power, sometimes even installing and deposing emperors at will. The sack of Rome in 410 AD while not the end of the Western Empire, had a profound psychological impact. The Eternal City, the symbol of Roman power and glory for centuries, had fallen to a barbarian army. This event sent shockwaves throughout the empire and its neighbors, signaling the empire's growing vulnerability. The loss of key provinces, such as North Africa to the Vandals, was a critical blow. North Africa was a vital source of grain for Rome, and its loss severely disrupted the food supply and further weakened the empire's economy. The inability of the Western Roman government to effectively respond to these losses highlighted its diminishing power and control. By the mid-5th century, the Western Roman Empire was a shadow of its former self. Its territory had shrunk considerably, its economy was in tatters, and its military was largely composed of barbarian mercenaries. The central government held little real authority, and regional power was increasingly in the hands of Germanic warlords. Now, we arrive at the traditional date for the fall of the Western Roman Empire, 476 AD. In this year, the barbarian general Odoacer deposed the last Western Roman emperor, a young man ironically named Romulus Augustus. However, it's important to understand that this event was not a sudden, dramatic collapse, but rather the culmination of a long process of decline. Odoacer did not declare himself emperor, but instead sent the imperial regalia to the Eastern Roman emperor in Constantinople, effectively signaling the end of the Western Roman line of emperors. So, what are some of the recent updates or ongoing discussions regarding the fall of Rome as we look towards 2025? While there won't be definitive new events to add to this historical period, ongoing archaeological excavations and reinterpretations of existing evidence continue to refine our understanding. For example, new archaeological findings in former Roman provinces might provide further insights into the nature of the interaction between Roman and barbarian populations, shedding light on the processes of cultural exchange and conflict. Furthermore, historical scholarship is increasingly focusing on the complex interplay of environmental factors, such as climate change, and their potential contribution to the pressures faced by the Roman Empire and the movements of barbarian peoples. Research in areas like paleoclimatology can offer new perspectives on the challenges faced by agricultural societies. In late antiquity, there's also a growing emphasis on understanding the resilience and transformation of Roman society in the aftermath of the traditional fall. The Eastern Roman Empire, as we mentioned, continued for another 1,000 years, preserving many aspects of Roman law, culture, and administration. Even in the West, Roman institutions and traditions had a lasting influence on the development of the new Germanic kingdoms. Ongoing research explores the ways in which Roman and barbarian cultures blended and adapted in the post-Roman world. Now, as promised, let's reveal the #1 reason often cited for the fall of Rome, the one that might surprise you. It wasn't just one single reason, and the fall itself is a complex and ongoing debate among historians. While barbarian invasions were undoubtedly a major contributing factor, attributing the collapse solely to them oversimplifies a much more intricate historical process. The internal weaknesses we discussed: economic instability, political chaos, military decline, social divisions had already severely weakened the Western Roman Empire, making it far more vulnerable to external pressures. The barbarian migrations and invasions were, in many ways, exploiting existing vulnerabilities, rather than delivering a single decisive blow to a strong and healthy empire. Furthermore, the very concept of a sudden and complete fall is being increasingly challenged by modern historians. The transformation of the Western Roman Empire was a gradual process of decentralization, fragmentation, and cultural fusion. Roman institutions and culture did not simply vanish, but evolved, and were adapted by the new Germanic rulers and their populations. So, while the dramatic image of barbarian hordes sacking Rome is a powerful one, the reality is a much more nuanced and complex story. The decline and transformation of the Western Roman Empire was the result of a confluence of long-term internal problems and external pressures. A slow and multifaceted process rather than a swift and decisive end. The legacy of Rome, however, continued to shape the course of Western civilization for centuries to come. A testament to the enduring impact of this once great empire. Thank you for joining us on this historical exploration. If you found this video informative, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below with your thoughts on the fall of Rome.